piece. It's called The Lover, and it's a video installation in the gallery, but it's receiving video data from around the museum in 3 different locations. And in each of the locations there's 2 cameras, and the cameras are programmed using computer vision to profile the people that it sees. And so it will profile them according to age and gender, and so it will automatically work those things out using an algorithm. And then it stores files with all these people on it, and it tags them according to what they are. And then basically the video installation upstairs attempts to use those files to rebuild a story, or to create a story that is based around a play by Harold Pinter called The Lover, which is a story involves a husband and a wife, and they're living a sort of very suburban existence, kind of bored, and so they both take a lover. And as you go through the play, you know, it's very sort of middle class and bourgeois. You know, say, did your lover come today? Did you show him the hollyhocks? All these kind of things. And eventually you realize that they don't actually have lovers. They simply are role-playing and pretending to be each other's lovers. So the husband goes off to work, and then he comes back in the afternoon, and he's called Max. And he's like, you know, much more working class all of a sudden. And the wife really enjoys this. But what becomes increasingly apparent throughout the play is that the husband doesn't enjoy it, and that he wants to stop being his wife's lover and return to being her husband. She seems to prefer her lover to her husband. And so, you know, this kind of goes on, and he starts, you know, contradicting her fantasies, and by the end, he kind of gives in, and he reverts to the role of the lover. And so it's an interesting reference point for the piece, because it uses it's really all about identity switching, and you know, fantasy, and you know, being in a museum like this seems like an appropriate place for those kind of people somehow. So the story seems to relate quite interestingly to surveillance as well. In the works I've been making recently, many of which use surveillance cameras as a way of constructing narrative. One of the sort of primary features of that is that you don't have a story in which you have the same character all the way along. You have multiple different people, all of whom get profiled according to their demographic and really assume like a single character. So multiple people will play the same character. And so with identity switching in this narrative, it kind of works very well with that idea where you can have like a single character played by everybody in the museum who is of a particular demographic. And so that kind of ties in nicely with it as well. But then one of the things I'm particularly interested in with this surveillance meets the lover kind of idea is our relationship with surveillance. You know, on the one hand, you know, we might feel intimidated by it and shy away from this idea of being observed. But on the other, you know, you find this kind of almost exhibitionist kind of streak within people as well. So if you look at social media and stuff like that, you see this precisely. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, it's all a form of like self-surveillance. We want to communicate through these kind of information networks, but at the same time, we have this kind of ambivalent relationship, and we explore identities through that kind of thing as well. So it seemed like a play like The Lover really kind of ties in thematically and conceptually quite well with surveillance, and so that's the idea that's being explored with this piece in this museum. And it's kind of the first real experiment that I've done with projects like this in real time. So previous works have used these kind of technologies, but they've generally absorbed a bunch of footage and then spat out like one video per day or something like that. Whereas this is working in close to real time. So as people are moving around the museum, the footage is being assembled, within a matter of minutes back in the gallery, and then being pieced back together. So as they're walking around and you're watching the video, you're seeing kind of a snapshot of who's in the museum at any given time, and what the kind of narrative potential would be of those people, or those combinations of people. I think what's interesting about a piece like this is how it evolves, because the cameras will be capturing over the course of the next 2 months for this exhibition, and the way it's structured means that the videos could consist of people who have visited the museum at various points across that 2 months. So you might find yourself in the museum and then discover yourself in dialogue with yourself when you were there like the week before, or you might find yourself in dialogue with somebody who's right next to you or in the next room, or whatever it might be, and you're juxtaposed and you become like entangled in this kind of love story. Extrapolating that over a longer term, this piece was shown again in 6 months or a year or 50 years, and you had this footage, then you would be able to kind of share that space with maybe your mother or your father, or you might have your baby with you in one footage, and then like 10 years later he's running around, or whatever it might be. And so I think there's an interesting sort of real-time element in combination with the archive, which kind of enriches the project potentially as a kind of collection. I think it's very difficult to collect, nevertheless, and wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I think the complexity of work like this makes it hard to imagine restaging it, and that's certainly something to navigate.